Hello everyone, this is part 52 of What If Naruto Was the Devil Ninja, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Unlike devils, vampires lived in the human world, in the darkness of the human world. What this meant was a bit complicated. They still lived in the human world, but their world was basically like a second world existing parallel to the humans, isolated despite existing on the same plane. To reach the vampires' territory, Rias, Kiba, and Azazel had met up with Elmenhild at the airport late at night and boarded a private jet owned by the Carmilla faction. The private jet was not as luxurious as one owned by the House of Gremory, but it was still impressive. A carpeted floor, numerous chairs to lounge on, and a professional bar decorated the interior. Of course, the bar was filled mostly with blood instead of wine. Rias fortunately didn't drink. Azazel did, however, and he had more than a few things to say about the lack of good booze. Rias spent most of her time speaking with Elmenhild. She wanted to know the vampire girl a little better, and now was the perfect opportunity. Because her desire was to know more about Elmenhild personally, she kept the conversation away from politics and anything involving the current squabble between the Carmilla and Tipa's factions. Her goal was to get a feel for Elmenhild as a person. The first thing she learned was that Elmenhild was supremely arrogant, even more so than the most arrogant pure-blood devils. She was 10 times worse than Riza Phoenix had been when he stormed into the human world and demanded her hand in marriage. It is not that I do not acknowledge the strength of other races, Elmenhild said when Rias came onto the topic of strength and power. It is merely that all races pale in comparison to the nobility of vampires. Take you devils for instance. I will certainly not deny that you have incredible strength, but your strength comes at the cost of making you less perfect, less noble. You lack the refinement of a pure-blood vampire. So, even if you are strong, it is a strength that comes from sullying yourself. Her beliefs were radical and her thoughts arrogant beyond measure. If Rias did not have experience dealing with arrogant people and the patience to put up with her boyfriend's antics, she might have been tempted to throw this child out the window. She guessed it was a good thing Naruto could act whimsical and stupid. I am amazed you can say that when you're seeking our help, Azazel said as he sat in one of the lounge chairs. He looked relaxed with his posture slumped against the seat and his arms crossed. His smirk looked arrogant to others, but Rias already knew the man's personality and wasn't bothered. HMPH. Did I not just say we can acknowledge the strength of others? You might be a filthy fallen, but your knowledge of sacred gears is still second to none. We noble vampires have acknowledged that, Elmenhild said with crossed arms as she looked her nose down at Azazel. Well, gee, I am pleased to know you think so highly of me, Azazel muttered. I find your form of arrogance and discrimination toward other races quite odd, Rias confessed. It's not arrogance and discrimination. Elmenhild puffed out her tiny chest. It's pride. Rias did not think it was pride, but she decided not to get into that argument. It took 15 hours to fly from Japan to Romania, where the vampire clans lived. Romania was a relatively large country located in southeastern Europe. Bordering the Black Sea on one side, Romania was surrounded by numerous other countries. The city where the private jet landed was Bucharest. There was a limousine at the airport that was waiting for them. The driver was, of course, a young female vampire with blood-red eyes, pale skin like that of a corpse, and the same blondish hair as Elmenhild. That said, Rias thought the girl's looks were not as refined as Elmenhild's impeccable and doll-like beauty. She determined this woman was a Dhampir-like gasper. It will take at least 1 hour to reach vampire territory, Elmenhild informed Rias, Kiba, and Azazel as they made themselves comfortable. The limousine was definitely luxurious, with soft leather seating that could be individually adjusted to suit each person's preference. Rias found herself wanting to play with the controls of her seat. She was certain the only thing keeping her from doing so was understanding that this desire was Naruto's influence. That man could not keep still and constantly had to be messing with something. She fondly recalled the first time he had rode in a limo and touched everything that looked interesting. How are you feeling, Kiba? Rias whispered to her bodyguard. I am fine, Kiba said out of the side of his mouth. Just keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. I heard the vampires lived far away from human society, Rias said in a louder voice to distract herself from her desires. Elmenhild nodded. Although we acknowledge that we need humans to survive, we do not like associating with them. Of course, we also understand that keeping ourselves out of the limelight is for our own survival as well. Do you know when I will be able to visit the Vladi family? Asked Rias. With a small scowl on her face, Elmenhild said, I will have to speak with Queen Carmilla. You should understand that our faction is currently at war with the Teepa's faction. The House of Vladi is on the Teepa's side. While I am certain my queen will be able to broker a meeting between you and the House of Vladi, you should expect it to take several days at least. I understand. I just wanted to know what I should expect. Since it looked like her questions were annoying Elmenhild, Rias did not ask any more questions and instead decided to satisfy her curiosity about the chair. It seemed she could not only adjust the elevation but also the heat, how it conformed to her spinal cord, and it even extended a footrest. Gremory limos didn't have these features. She wondered if maybe she could convince her parents to adopt them whenever they decided to buy the next round of limos. The drive was mostly silent. Rias spent her time inside the limo looking out the window, staring at the passing scenery. It was night, but she could see just fine with her devil-enhanced eyesight. They had already left the city behind and were now traveling through a small road that looked like hardly anyone had tread upon it. Romania was a very green country, with forests, farmlands, and valleys populating much of the terrain. Even the mountains were covered in trees. The area they were passing through was a forest. Thick trees with large trunks and lush branches covered in green leaves lay on their left and right, swaying in the soft breeze. Rias wished she could roll down a window. She was certain the fresh scent of trees would be pleasant, but it was sadly quite cold in Romania, and the night made it even colder. Because of the late evening and perhaps her overactive imagination, Rias thought she saw shadows moving through the trees that weren't natural. There was nothing when she looked back, however. She sighed and turned away from the window to eye her two companions. Azazel looked the same as always, and Elmenhild was sitting with her hands in her lap, prim and proper. The forest eventually vanished. She leaned back to look out the window as a small village appeared before them. It was very quaint. The buildings were made of plain stone and red tiles covered the roofs. Some of the buildings had a fence or wall protecting it, but most did not. There were a lot of people roaming the streets. All of them were pale-skinned and possessed crimson eyes. Many of them had a doll-like beauty that made them seem inhuman. As their limo passed one of these people, Rias looked at the young man's mouth and noticed the sharp fangs protruding from them. Vampires. Every one of the people outside was a vampire, which explained why this small village was so active at night. This is the Carmilla faction's territory, Elmenhild explained to Rias and Azazel. My queen lives in a mansion in the very center of this village. She likes being able to see the people she rules. I'd heard that pureblood vampires have an even harder time giving birth than devils, thus their low birth rates, Azazel said as he studied the vampires they drove past. Many of the vampires were pointing at their limo, but they could not see inside of it because the windows were tinted. This village isn't very big. I guess there was some truth to those rumors. We may not be able to give birth easily, but that hardly matters, Elmenhild said with a scoff. Vampires are immortal. We are eternity. We do not need to give birth very often to maintain our numbers, so there is little point in worrying about such matters. And yet that doesn't stop your kind from producing Dhampir with humans, Azazel pointed out. Elmenhild shrugged. Every species has their foibles, and not all vampires care to force themselves on humans. Why is it so foggy? Asked Rias as she noticed the thick blanket of fog covering the village. It wasn't so much that she couldn't see, but it was like a curtain of white mist hovered over everything. That is Her Majesty Carmilla's mist, Elmenhild said. All vampires are able to manipulate fog, Azazel added, arms crossed as he too gazed out the window. They often use it to create barrier or search for enemies. High-level vampires like Lady Carmilla can create enough fog to blanket an entire town and can even transform into fog itself to avoid attacks or escape if they are in danger. Elmenhild snorted. You certainly know a lot about vampires and our abilities. Azazel shrugged. I make it a point to learn everything I can about other races. It did not take more than 10 minutes to reach the mansion. Large but elegant, the mansion looked more like a castle than a simple mansion. Several towers with crenellations for people to shoot arrows or fire spells from above gave it a defensible appearance. Flying buttresses ran along the outer walls. 4 towers jutted from the center and traveled up, ending in sharp points, and many of the windows viewable from their location were stained glass depicting the House of Carmilla's family crest. The limo drove up to the front, where Elmenhild's bodyguards opened the door for her and allowed him to step outside. A brisk chill entered Ria's bones and caused her to shiver. She would have hugged her arms, but doing so might have been seen as a sign of weakness. Elmenhild didn't even seem to register the cold. Man, is it chilly? Azazel had none of the trouble expressing himself that she did. He grabbed his arms and rubbed them as he shivered in a manner that was so exaggerated she thought he might be faking to garner sympathy. Not that it worked. Elmenhild merely scoffed at him. This weather is nothing. If you think this is bad, you'll s when winter comes. Now hurry up. I will show you to the guest quarters, where you will be staying while I report to Queen Carmilla. They were left with little choice but to follow Elmenhild as she led them up a wide staircase that led toward the entrance, a pair of double doors guarded by 2 vampires who vaguely reminded Rias of knights. Each vampire held open a door as Elmenhild stepped up, allowing the group to pass through. What Rias discovered inside the palace was a marvelous entrance hall with a marble floor, black like the night itself. The walls had candles situated inside elegant candelabras. Each one provided enough illumination to let them see just fine, but it didn't give this place a warm atmosphere. Vampires liked dark spaces, and this castle was a prime example. Even though the entrance hall was magnificent, with many decorations to showcase the Carmilla faction's wealth, it was also cold and uninviting. Rias studied what she could of the mansion as Elmenhild led them through the entrance hall. This place had a similar build to her family's mansion, though it was quite a bit smaller. The Gremori family home was a castle with a similar architectural style, a structure based on older European castles. The hallways were wide and lacked windows. Each hall had numerous doors that led to various rooms which seemed to serve no real purpose but were still fully furnished. It was just like her family's estate in that regard. They didn't actually need all those rooms, but they enjoyed showing off their wealth. Devils and vampires were not much different in that regard. There were quite a few maids scurrying about. Rias noticed a distinct lack of butlers, but she guessed that was natural in the female-dominated Carmilla faction. She knew the faction didn't disdain men. Even so, she was certain Queen Carmilla preferred being surrounded by women thanks to the battle between her faction and the Teeper's faction. This is where you will stay for the time being, Elmenhild said as she showed Rias, Kiba, and Azazel to their rooms. All 3 rooms were across from each other, connected by a living space where they could adjourn to should they need to speak with each other. The living space was large and did not contain much, but it did have a couch, some comfortable chairs, and a table with 2 chairs for them to drink tea. Azazel complained a little about how there wasn't a bar. Rias, however, had no issues with the living quarters, especially since she didn't plan on staying there for more than a day or 2. Please do not leave this room, Elmenhild continued. I have to inform Her Majesty Carmilla about your arrival. That's fine, Rias said. We will remain here. Guess we'll be kicking it back for a while, Azazel muttered with a sigh as he plopped on the couch, his posture lazy. Elmenhild soon left the 3 of them alone. This was actually the first time Rias had ever been alone with Azazel. They did not have much contact outside of occult research club meetings and the few emergency situations they had dealt with together, but those were always in the presence of other people. How long do you think it will take them to set up a meeting with the House of Vladi? Asked Rias as she sat on one of the chairs. I'm not sure. Azazel stroked his beard. I think it will depend on the House of Vladi's disposition and how well the meeting goes. It could take as little as 1 day or as long as several weeks. Honestly, it's hard to say more without fully understanding the situation here. I guess, Rias sighed. She'd been hoping to hear something more concrete than that. It looked like they would be playing the waiting game. Devil Ninja, Devil Ninja, BWA ha 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 ha. Do you really think you can beat me, Oppai Rangers? You 3 must be dreaming. Coo. He's too strong. Even after we combined our powers, we were still no match for him. Naruto was kneeling on the ground, struggling to stand up. Nobody could see his face. That was because of the Kamen Rider, because of the Oppai Ranger mask he donned. It was an orange mask, because orange was cool, and it was complemented by his all-orange bodysuit, because orange was cool. Kneeling on the ground beside him was Ise, dressed in a similar suit but one that was red, and Gasper, who was dressed as a magical girl. The person looming before them was decked out in a crimson suit that would have looked similar to theirs, but it had spikes lining the shoulders, knees, and elbows, making it look evil. The visor of his helmet was also narrower and held a more ominous appearance. Crimson eyes gazed at him from within the black SS. I don't have much power left, you two, Gasper said in a strained voice. I'm running on empty as well, Naruto admitted. Ah, this sucks. What should we do? Asked Ise as he slammed his fist into the ground. BWA ha ha ha. Give up, Oppai Rangers. There is no way you can defeat me, Satan Red. As Satan Red spoke, he made some very weird and exaggerated hand gestures that were kind of comical. Of course, Naruto, Ise, and Gasper did not break character and laugh, as that would have upset the children. Speaking of, oh no, a young lady exclaimed into a microphone as she stared at the audience of kids several meters away. Satan Red is about to defeat the Oppai Dragon and his lively companions, Foxy Nenga and White Knight. What will they do? The kids were already on the edge of their seats, and her words only further served to excite them and increase the tension. Many of the kids started shouting words like, "Don't give up," and "You can do this, Oppai Dragon." It was honestly endearing, except Naruto didn't know how these kids' mothers could be okay with them screaming, "B-Dragon," in public like this. Just how did Ise and his love for tea become so popular in the underworld anyway? Oppai Dragon, Naruto said with a strained groan. I think we need to use that technique. That technique. Ise turned to look at Naruto. You mean? Yes. Let's summon BS. But we don't have enough power, Gasper exclaimed. He seemed to be having fun with his role, but Naruto thought he sensed a lot of fear in the boy as well. Then, let's ask the kids to help us. Ise turned to the children in the audience, and Irina, who was standing in her seat and screaming at them not to give up. We're going to summon BS. But we do not have the power to summon him on our own. We need your help, kids. Everyone. I need you to scream, Oppai. OPPAI. Naruto thought he might go deaf as all the kids in the audience screamed their lungs out. He had no idea they could be so loud. Their voice resounded across the small stage and caused the very ground to shake, or it seemed that way to him. I can feel it working. Ise exclaimed. Yes, with your power, we can summon Tickle Bitties. At that moment, Satan Red was forced to leap back as the ground between him and the group exploded. The reason he leapt was not because of the explosion. Red smoke erupted everywhere as a small section of the floor disappeared and a platform with a figure on it rose from the ground. The figure was Akeno, who looked mildly amused and partially annoyed. She was dressed in a red and white shrine maiden outfit, which suited her Yamato Nadeshiko looks perfectly. Thank you, everyone. Because of you, we have summoned BS. Ise exclaimed. Ara. Akeno covered her mouth with a hand. I'm not sure I approve. Oppai Dragon. What are you doing here? What's going on? I'm afraid there is no time to explain. Please, I need to poke your headlights. Well, if you must, go ahead. Ise did not actually poke Akeno's tatus, which probably would have gotten him arrested for sexual harassment even here in the underworld. A screen lit up behind him and showed Ise's two index fingers pressing down on something that looked like NS. Ah yeah, I feel the power. At that moment, Ise's body came alive with lights as power exploded from him. Armor appeared on his body, crimson red and extremely powerful. This was Ise's balance breaker, a weapon so powerful that it could easily destroy a city, and he was using it as part of a stage performance for a Sentai show in the underworld. With the Oppai Dragon powered up, Ise was more than capable of defeating Satan Red, much to the delight of the audience. The performance soon ended. Naruto, Ise, and Gasper found themselves in the backroom as several makeup artists helped them remove all the makeup they were wearing. There was so much on that Naruto thought his entire face was covered in powder. I think we did a good job, Gasper said. Damn right, we did, Ise exclaimed. We were awesome. I'm still not sure how you became the most popular person among us, Naruto mumbled. The kids in the underworld really love how obsessed with BS you are. Hell if I know. Ise shrugged. I'm just sort of going with the flow here. They found out through Sirex that Issei had become very popular among the children of the underworld, who apparently loved the way he kept talking about BS during his rating game matches. They had begun calling him the Oppai Dragon and even gave him a theme song. This unprecedented popularity had given Sirex the idea of doing stage performances. In other words, Super Sentai shows. Naruto, Gasper, and Issei were part of the Oppai Rangers, be-loving fighters who fought for tea and justice, and Issei was their leader, the Oppai Dragon. It was kind of ridiculous, but Naruto supposed that was the underworld for you. Gasper was the mascot character. As the makeup artists finished removing their makeup, the doors opened and in walked Ravel, Rossweiss, Koneko, Akeno, Rainier, Irina, Gasper, Xenavia, Asia, and even Sirex, who was still dressed in his Satan Red armor. Yes, Sirex was indeed Satan Red. When he had discussed the possibility of turning them into a Super Sentai team like a certain popular human show, he had demanded that he also be a part of this. Thus Satan Red had been born. He was a villain who had once been on the side of good, but he had become corrupted by the evil supervillain, who had not been introduced or even named yet because they were still trying to think of who should play the part. That was a magnificent performance, you three, Sirex said. He was wearing a large smile. Out of all the people who had come to take part in this event, Naruto was certain Sirex was having the most fun. Thanks, the three said in unison. I still can't believe an Oppai-obsessed dragon has become the #1 most popular hit in the underworld, Rossweiss said, placing a hand against her face to emphasize her disbelief. I'm just wondering what Rias will think when she hears her own brother wanted to get in on the action, Koneko said. Sirex laughed. I'm sure she'll be fine with it. She'll be more stressed than a crack addict who can't get his fix, Koneko returned. I can't believe you people actually turned this into a show. Rainier grumbled with a displeased look on her face. This is the stupidest thing I have ever seen. You foo-foo-foo. You're just jealous that I was used in the summoning ritual to help I's power up, Akeno said. You're damn right I am. What's so great about your tea anyway? My twins could power him up even better. Naruto wondered if those two would ever get along, but it seemed like arguing had become their habit. He decided not to focus on the two and instead turned to Sirex. I wonder, do you think I can also take part in this performance next time? Xenavia wondered out loud. I'm sure you can, Asia said with a determined smile. We just need to ask Sirex. I bet you anything he'd give you a part. Oh, I want to play a role too. Irina shouted enthusiastically. Has there been any news related to the Chaos Brigade? Naruto asked, ignoring the conversation between the church trio. Sirex shook his head. I'm afraid not. The Chaos Brigade has mostly gone underground. They are still harassing our forces, but there hasn't been a direct confrontation since you rescued Office and destroyed the hero faction. Naruto really wanted to know what the Chaos Brigade was up to, but more than that, he wanted to know where Yami went. He was worried about what his other half might be up to. Yami still possessed the majority of their power. Naruto's only trump card right now was his ability to reverse summon Kurama, but that required a lot of time, preparation, and several thousand hand seals. It wasn't something he could just use on a whim. There was not much left for the group to do, so after heading out to their signing event and meeting with the kids, everyone traveled back to the human world, and life continued on as normal. Devil Ninja. Naruto was walking to school with the other members of Rias Peerage. There was also Irina, Rainier, Office, and Ravel, who were not a part of her peerage that were walking with them. He was sure Rossweiss would have liked to travel to school with them as well, but it would have looked bad for a teacher to walk to school with her students. People would have asked questions. She also had to arrive an hour earlier than they did because she needed to attend teacher meetings. We're taking a field trip to the aquarium today, Ravel was telling Naruto about what she and Koneko were doing this day. It should be fun. Are you sure a flaming chicken like you will be okay surrounded by water? Asked Koneko. How rude. I am not afraid of a little water. And what about you? I heard cats don't like getting wet. Okay, you too. There's no need to get into an argument this early in the morning, is there? The one who tried to break him up was not Naruto, but Irina, who had imposed herself between the two. Of course there is, Koneko said. I can't let her insults go. Ravel added. Irina found herself unable to stop the two from fighting, so Naruto just pulled her back and said, "Don't worry about them. You know they do this all the time, but they're really good friends. I guess." Irina sighed. "Thank you for looking out for them though," Naruto said before he leaned in and kissed her on the cheek. You're welcome," Irina squeaked like a frightened squirrel and moved back over to Asia and Zenevia. The two girls easily included her in their conversation. It was only a 15 walk from home to school, so they made great time and split up after saying goodbye. It wasn't long before the school gates came into view. As always, the group brought a lot of attention, but they were so used to being the focal point of everyone's stares that none of them were bothered anymore. Naruto turned to face Koneko and Ravel. "I want you two to be extra cautious while you're at the aquarium. Don't forget that the Chaos Brigade may still be after Ravel. We haven't received any reports of them infiltrating Kuo right now, but that doesn't mean they can't be lying in wait somewhere. Koneko, I'll be counting on you to have Ravel's back if something happens. Be sure to contact me." "Don't worry," Koneko said with a determined glare. "I'll protect this fried chicken with my life." "Oh, honestly, don't you ever get tired of calling me that?" Of course not. Because they were in public and Naruto didn't want to be known as a womanizer, even though he kind of was, Naruto merely rubbed their heads as he said goodbye to the pair. Everyone split up after saying goodbye. Akano went her own way. She was the only senior among them. Asia, Issei, Rainier, and Zenevia all shared classes together. Meanwhile, Naruto traveled with Irina, who he shared classes with. There was a time before when Irina was disappointed she wasn't in the same class as Issei, Asia, and Zenevia. That was before she and Naruto started dating. Now that they had become a couple, she seemed happier to be with him. School was the same as always. Naruto found himself taking surprising comfort in the normality that was classes, something he'd have never done back when he was younger. Having all kinds of new responsibilities shoved onto him was the likely culprit for this change of heart. He'd become a high-class devil, but all that seemed to mean was he had even more responsibilities now than he used to. As he sat at his desk, taking notes as Rosweiss lectured them, his thoughts went to Ravel and Koneko. They should be at the aquarium by now. He wondered if they were enjoying their time there. Naruto could already imagine them arguing over something simple like whether or not the fish trapped within the tanks would make good food or something similar. The thought brought a smile to his face. "Don't be too complacent, Naruto." Naruto perked up when Kurama's voice suddenly entered his mind. Rosweiss was still lecturing their class. Everyone else was either diligently taking notes or fantasizing about the woman who was teaching them. Irina was one of the more diligent students. "It's been a while since I've heard from you, Kurama. And what do you mean by complacent?" "HMPH. I am not surprised you have not sensed it since you've been forced to cut yourself off from Senjutsu chakra. The reason I have been so quiet is because I was extending my senses around Kuo Academy. There are a lot of new presences thanks to the alliance between the three factions, and that has made it difficult to sense potential intruders." Naruto didn't say anything at first, but then, slowly, he asked, "Does that mean you have sensed something?" "I have, though I don't know where it is coming from. Multiple presences have been appearing at the edge of my perception for some time now. I have tried tracking them, but it seems they are being extra cautious and have stayed away from the areas we spend most of our time. The only times I've been able to sense them is when you deviate from your usual routine, such as when you take your women on dates." Naruto stopped writing in his notebook and paid more attention to what Kurama was telling him. It sounded like there was a very real chance a group of people with hostile intentions had infiltrated Kuo without their knowledge. He would have liked to believe such a thing wasn't possible, but he also understood it would be much easier to infiltrate now that so many people from various races were making this place their home. While Naruto was thinking about this, a cough echoed from the front. "Mr. Uzumaki, are my lectures really so boring that you feel the need to space out, or are you perhaps so knowledgeable about this subject that you don't feel the need to listen to me?" Naruto looked toward the front of the class and found Rosweiss staring at him with a very dissatisfied expression on her face, which was red and made her seem like she was on the verge of crying. Whenever this normally happened, Naruto would joke around with her. This time he actually felt bad. It had not been his intention to ignore Rosweiss, and he had even been dutifully taking notes just seconds prior, but then Kurama had given him that warning and his thoughts turned inward. Of course, he could not tell her about what Kurama said right now. That would have to wait for after class. I'm sorry, Naruto sincerely apologized. I'll pay more attention. Rosweiss appeared startled by the sincerity in his voice, but she coughed into her hand and said, Very well. Please pay more attention. Everything I'm teaching you right now will be on your upcoming test. Naruto once more focused on Rosweiss as she lectured them and wrote notes on the board. She was a very good teacher. He noticed Irina casting him a glance out of the corner of their eyes, but he merely shook his head at her and mouthed, later. Class eventually ended and the next class began. It was math. Naruto neither cared for math nor did he like the teacher, so he replaced himself with a clone and slipped out of the classroom. Wandering the halls by walking on the ceiling, Naruto made his way toward the teacher's office, which was where all the teachers went when they weren't busy. There, he found Rosweiss sitting alone as she did some work on her computer. Hey, he said from the ceiling. Ari. Rosweiss shrieked and leapt to her feet, but sadly, her foot caught her chair and she tumbled backward. She would have hit the ground if Naruto didn't jump down and catch her. Careful, Naruto said as he steadied the woman so she wouldn't fall. You're the one who should be careful, Rosweiss snapped. You scared me half to death. And what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in class? You have math, if I'm not mistaken. I ditched, Naruto said. Don't tell a teacher you ditched class so casually. Rosweiss seemed a bit more sulky than usual, which Naruto realized might be his fault. They hadn't done much together lately because they were both so busy. Rosweiss made frequent trips to the Norse territory alongside Akeno. Naruto had meanwhile been spending most of his time in his office, reading through reports, filing reports when disputes took place, and writing up new policies. Koneko, Ravel, and Office were the only girls he'd had with in the last few days since Rias left for Europe. Sorry, I actually ditched because I have something important to tell you, Naruto said. As he launched into an explanation of what Kurama told him, Rosweiss became a lot more serious. She didn't say anything as he spoke, not even to ask questions, opting to sit with her arms crossed and her expression pensive. Even after he finished, she didn't say anything right away. I'm glad to know the reason you weren't paying attention to me was because of something serious like this, Rosweiss said at last, sighing. You were right to worry. Gondal has also mentioned to me that she has been sensing strange magic emanations appearing and disappearing randomly around Kuo as well. So you think it might be possible that mages from the Chaos Brigade have infiltrated the city? Asked Naruto. It is certainly possible, though I do not enjoy entertaining the thought. Rosweiss paused as she placed her left leg over her right, put her hands on her knee, and adopted a pensive but thoughtful expression. There are many types of magic that can be used to conceal yourself from others. However, these spells will always leave traces behind. Coincidentally, the traces of magic Gondal has been sensing match what I know of concealment magic. It is entirely possible the person or people concealing themselves are mages from the Chaos Brigade. And we just let Ravel go on a field trip with minimal guards, Naruto muttered. He'd had a bad feeling ever since Kurama told him about the presences he sensed, and now with Rosweiss telling him about Gondal sensing the same thing and the concealing magic, that bad feeling had grown. It turned into a squirming ball in the pit of his stomach. Slipping a hand into his pocket, Naruto pulled out his cell phone. It was not something he used often because there was rarely a need for it. Devils could communicate telepathically and most preferred contacting people using devices that created hologram-like figures so they could talk face to face. However, Naruto was a firm believer in having modern conveniences like this just in case he couldn't contact someone via magic. Everyone who lived with him had a cell phone. Naruto quickly found Ravel's contact information and pressed the call button. He listened to the sound of ringing as he waited for Ravel to pick up the phone, but it soon went into voicemail. He called twice more. When she still didn't pick up, he called Koneko in the hopes she would pick up, but that also turned out to be useless. Neither of them are picking up, Naruto said with worry. It's possible they are currently occupied or left their phones in their lockers. Rosweiss didn't sound like she believed her own words, but was offering them simply to present a possibility. Naruto shook his head. I don't think that's it. Sorry, But do you mind if I skip school for the rest of the day? I'll have my clones take my place. Rosweiss looked stressed when he asked this question, but she couldn't do much more than sigh. Oh, all right, you can go and see if Ravel and Koneko are safe. I would feel awful if something happened to them. However, should it turn out this was a false alarm, you will have to attend a nightly lesson with me. That's fine. To be honest, I really hope this does turn out to be a false alarm. With Rosweiss giving him the okay as his homeroom teacher, Naruto leapt through the window and hit the ground running, his destination the aquarium. Devil Ninja. The aquarium seemed like an entirely different world to Ravel, who had never been to the ocean, never swam beneath the sea. Each floor seemed to have different schools of fish. On the very first floor were creatures found close to the surface. There were all kinds of fish, of course, but there were also otters, penguins, seals, and dolphins. They each had their own exhibit area. In the very center of this aquarium was a large glass cylinder that had many types of sea animals. It extended all the way to the top of the building. Because their class was so big, the teacher had them split up into groups and go their separate ways. They were supposed to meet back up at the lobby by 12. Ravel was grouped with Koneko and Miltelt, the fallen angel who had at one point been Rainer's lackey. She didn't quite get along with Miltelt, but she didn't hate the blonde fallen angel either. She seemed like an okay girl. Hey, Crowfeathers, check this out. Did you just say my wings look like a crow's? I did. So what? Why you are just as bad as that damn Naruto. I'll take that as a compliment. There was also the fact that when Miltelt was around, Koneko spent more time teasing her than she did Ravel. That was a good thing. It was definitely a good thing. Ravel didn't enjoy being teased by Koneko. Certainly not. And she wasn't jealous that Koneko seemed to enjoy teasing Miltelt more than she did her. That would be stupid. Still, could you two hurry up? If we keep standing around like this, we won't be able to see the other exhibits. Yes, even though she wasn't bothered one bit by how Koneko was paying more attention to some fallen angel than to her, Ravel needed to split them apart so they could get moving. It was fortunate neither of them suspected she might be feeling lonely. The two girls wandered over to her as they traveled to the second floor by walking along the elevated walkway that spiraled around the central display. Ravel found herself staring at the many aquatic creatures swimming through the water. There weren't just fish but also turtles, manta rays, sharks, and even what looked like a baby whale. Do all these creatures live in the ocean? She asked no one in particular. Of course they do, Koneko muttered. Where else would they live? I don't know. It's not like I've ever gone to the ocean before. I haven't even gone to the beach. Ravel snapped. You haven't even been to the beach before. Miltelt snickered into her hand. That's just pathetic. I've been to the beach many times in the past. Oh, how I miss the beautiful white sand and gentle waves. Ravel glared at Miltelt, who she knew was trying to make her jealous, but it wouldn't work. She wasn't going to get jealous that someone had gone to the beach a lot while she hadn't been there even once. Noble blood devils like her didn't get jealous of others. You jelly? Asked Koneko. I am not. Ravel shouted. Don't worry. We can just ask Naruto if he'll take us to the beach, Koneko assured her. Ravel was about to shout again that she wasn't jealous, but then the words penetrated her brain. They could get Naruto to take them to the beach. As that thought filled her mind, Ravel imagined what it would be like if Naruto did take them to the beach. She would pick out a cute swimsuit to wear, something that her future husband would compliment her on, and then he would apply suntan lotion to her back. Just imagining the feeling of his hands rubbing lotion on her made Ravel dizzy. Afterward, they would play in the water, go swimming and maybe even snorkeling, and then, later that night, they would make sweet love on the white sands. Damn girl, you've got a major female boner for that Swede. What's so great about that guy anyway? Miltelt's words snapped Ravel out of her daydream. Hearing what this girl called her future husband caused Ravel and Koneko to both glare at her, which sent the girl rocking on her heels. You don't know the first thing about Naruto-sama. I'd like to ask that you kindly keep your mouth shut. Talk about my man like that again, and your ass is grass. Okay, geez, I won't say anything more about your man. Because Ravel was a bundle of curiosity, they stopped at each floor and checked out all the exhibits. The information on the different aquatic creatures was located next to each exhibit. Ravel read all the information about the various types of creatures found within the ocean. Koneko and Miltle didn't seem as interested as she was, but they had both lived in the human world for much longer than she had, so their lack of interest was understandable. Neither of them seemed to realize how lucky they were. Noon eventually hit, and the group met the other students in their class at the lobby. Their homeroom teacher gathered them all up and had them travel outside. This aquarium was rather large and had its own place to eat, but they had decided on not going there because of its limited selection of food. It was much warmer outside than it was inside. The aquarium had been somewhat chilly. Their large group walked down the street, the homeroom teacher at the front, and wandered into a nearby food court that had everything from fast food chains to yakisoba stands. What should we get? Asked Ravel. I think we should try one of those ramen stands, Koneko said. Ramen is Naruto-sama's favorite food. Everyone who was anyone knew about Naruto's two obsessions, the color orange and ramen. She didn't quite know how he became obsessed with either of those, but they were well-documented facts by this point, and Ravel had seen the way Naruto could devour bowl after bowl of the stuff without stopping. It was like he had a bottomless stomach specifically for ramen. I don't want anything that man likes to eat, Miltle complained. We should get a hamburger. Those are better. Ravel was just about to tell the girl to stop complaining, but before she could even consider it, the world around her suddenly vanished. No, not vanished. The world was still there, but all the people who had been milling about were now gone. Only her, Koneko, and Miltle remained. What's more, the sky above them had become an odd murky color with nebulous swirls creating streaks through what should have been a clear blue sky. Ravel's eyes widened. This is, someone's created a barrier, Koneko said as she slid her feet against the ground and adopted a combat stance. White cat ears suddenly appeared on her head and a tail emerged from underneath her skirt. The tail split into two as the Nekosho entered Nekomata mode 2. Oh, what the hell is up with this? Miltle growled as a spear of light appeared in her hand and black wings erupted from her back. I didn't sign up for this. Ravel was able to easily determine that someone had been waiting for them to walk out of the aquarium and set up this trap for them. She quickly went through all the information she had learned as Naruto's personal aide during this time period, coming to a conclusion that chilled her blood. I think we just fell into a trap set by mages of the Chaos Brigade, she said. No s, Koneko muttered. Ah, damn it, I should have known tagging along with you two would be trouble. Miltle complained. Ravel ignored Miltle's complaining as she looked at Koneko. Can you find them? Koneko nodded and didn't turn her head as she answered. There are 10 of them on the roof surrounding us and another 10 hidden behind the buildings. The strongest one is on the roof located to our left. So we're surrounded. Miltle shouted in shock before a scowl crossed her face. Well, that's just great. Guess this is what I get for becoming involved with your group. Why are you people always getting into trouble? Now isn't the time for that, Ravel snapped. She ignored the other blonde girls scowling and tried to think about what they should do in this situation. In chess, there was a maneuver called entrapment, which was a basic tactic in which one side attacks an enemy chess piece that has no squares to move to. Their situation was similar to that. They were trapped on all sides, and if they wanted to escape, they needed to break the entrapment by attacking where the group was weakest. In other words, they needed to attack on the opposite side of where the strongest enemy was located. Koneko! Ravel shouted as she exploded with power. Wings of fire erupted from her back as she turned around and raised her hands. The air grew hot, distortions appearing as the heat created waves in the atmosphere. Fire coalesced on her hand, quickly gathering to form a sphere that she launched down on Ali. A loud scream erupted from down that way as the alley exploded with a gout of flames. NYA. Several white spheres flew from Koneko's hands, tiny balls of senjutsu chakra that she hurled at the numerous enemies she could sense hiding. Her aim was true. The attacks blasted through the walls of buildings and struck her enemies on. Each attack erupted with power that sent her foes soaring through the air, their end broken as they hit the ground hard. Come on! Ravel shouted to Koneko and Miltle as she raced toward the alley where her first attack struck. Quickly! Don't let them escape! A shout came from one of the rooftops. Ravel, Koneko, and a still grumbling Miltle ran into the alley just as several magical attacks struck the ground where they had been standing. The explosion of magic hit their backs, but the attacks could not reach them. It was just the shockwave. The trio ran through the alley as several mages appeared on the roofs above them. Magic circles formed overhead. Ravel recognized the type of magic from the circle and immediately made a snap decision. They're using ice magic. Koneko. Miltalt. Hit them hard. Don't tell me what to do. Miltalt shouted, though despite complaining about being ordered around, the fallen angel still sent a light spear hurtling at one of their enemies. It didn't kill the person, who blocked it with another magic circle, but the attack served the purpose of disrupting their casting. Koneko didn't say anything as she threw several more blasts of senjutsu chakra at one of the enemy mages. Her attack wasn't aimed at the person, who threw up a shield, but at the magic circle, which exploded when her senjutsu chakra disrupted the circle. The mage who had been readying their magic could only scream as the circle desolized and exploded in their face, sending them flying off the roof and to the ground with a heavy thud. The group burst from the alley and onto the open road. Not a soul was in sight. It appeared they had been trapped in a large barrier that separated them from the human world. Ravel wondered how far this barrier extended, but it wasn't like the size mattered. They wouldn't be able to escape from something like this unless they defeated the person who created it, and she had a feeling the one who made it was the leader of this group. We need to find a place to hide and collect ourselves, Ravel said. I can sense where those mage Dutch nozzles are, Koneko said. Follow me. I'll find us a place to recover and plan our next move. Thanks to Koneko's senjutsu, she was able to sense all the life around her, including the life force of the attacking mages. This allowed them to avoid the area with the heaviest amount of mages, though they were attacked twice. However, thanks to the combined efforts of her and Koneko, they were able to quickly dispatch each mage before they could communicate their location to their fellow ambushers. Koneko, Ravel, and Miltalt soon found themselves hiding inside of a clothing store several blocks from where they were first ambushed. Oh, man. If I knew this was gonna happen, I would have stayed home, Miltalt complained as she crouched on the ground. She looked like she was having a panic attack. Pipe down, filthy crow, Koneko grumbled. Shut up. Don't call me a crow. We need to think of a plan to take these mages down, Ravel said as she ignored the small byplay between her current companions. We can't take them on all at once. Even with our strength, attacking a group of mages in a frontal assault is So what should we do? Asked Koneko. Ravel placed a hand against her chin and thought hard about what they could do in this situation. Her phone rang, but she couldn't afford to pick it up. Right now she needed to think about how to get out of their predicament. She couldn't think of a plan right away, so instead, she changed her thinking from what they should do to what the mages who ambushed them would do now that their prey had escaped. If I were those mages, now that my target had escaped, I would split up my forces into groups of 4 and scour the area. I'd make sure each group could maintain a line of communication, and I wouldn't have them move too far from each other so the groups could converge once one of them found the target again. Then I would surround the target and capture them. Ravel looked at her two companions. I believe I am their target. Mephisto-sama said the mage faction of the Chaos Brigade was looking for members of the House of Phoenix. Then maybe we should just give you to them, Miltalt said snidely. That would get them off our backs, ouch. Can it, bird brain, Koneko said after smacking the girl across the head. That's actually not a bad idea, Ravel murmured. Ha, Koneko looked at her friend like she'd lost her marbles. But Ravel just smiled. I think I have an idea. Devil Ninja. The mages had spread out to search for Ravel Phoenix on orders of their boss, but she seemed to have disappeared after breaking the entrapment. Their leader for this mission had them spread out in groups to search for the trio. He didn't let any group stray too far from the others, however, because he well knew of the prowess at least 2 of these girls possessed. Ravel Phoenix and Koneko Tuju were well known in entities. While they were not as powerful as people like Naruto Uzumaki and Issei Hyaudu, they had displayed enough strength for the magicians here to feel wary of them. If any of you catch sight of them, be sure to report it to me. Do not try to fight them on your own. Yes sir. Owen Magus was a magician from Northern Europe. He had joined the Chaos Brigade along with the other stray magicians when Mephisto Fields, that blasted devil, kicked them out of the Magicians Association. He was not what you would call a high-ranking member on the magician ladder, but he was the one in charge of this squadron who had been tasked with capturing Ravel Phoenix. Owen did not know what his leader wanted with this devil. He also didn't care. All that mattered was completing this mission and showing these damn devils, angels, and fallen angels that the group meant business. We found her. Where? She's running down Choshi. I have a clear view of her. Everyone, head to Choshi and hem her in. Don't let her escape. They were all speaking to each other telepathically using magic to connect their minds. This allowed them to speak with each other far more easily than humans using a cell phone. Owen didn't remain on the roof and jumped into action with the others, creating a magic circle beneath him that allowed him to fly using wind magic. It did not take long to reach Choshi Street. It was one of the widest streets in this section of Kuo City. Spotting Ravel was also easy since she was not trying to hide herself. Her fiery wings flapped as she flew low to the ground. Owen did not see her two companions, but he wasn't stupid enough to think they had just left her alone. Move in and capture her, but be wary of ambushes. With his orders given, the other magicians flew down and began peppering her with magic attacks. Because Ravel was a Phoenix, they used mostly water magic. Phoenix family members were known for their powers over wind and fire, so using either element against them was stupid, and lightning and earth didn't work well against them. Water magic was the Phoenix family's greatest weakness. Ravel proved how adept at flying she was as she soared through the magic attacks. She juked left, right, and barrel rolled through the air to avoid the barrage of water magic centered her. The magic slammed into the ground and destroyed the road. However, she remained unharmed. Owen did not give her a chance to retaliate. He ordered his mages to keep firing and even added his own firepower to the group, but the girl merely turned down an alley and disappeared. They followed, of course, but it was much harder to attack while she was traveling down that narrow alley. Someone get ahead of her and attack from the other side. Two of his men raced ahead and stopped near the exit. They raised their hands, called upon their magic, and prepared a magic circle to attack Ravel once she came into view. Ravel must have seen it coming. A wild cylinder of fire spewed from the alley and slammed into the two magicians, engulfing their bee. Owen grimaced when he saw the two fall from the sky and strike the ground hard enough to dent the pavement. Keep chasing her. Ravel continued to lead the group on a merry chase, darting into alleys and ambushing her pursuers with a use of sly tactics and timing. Owen was in shock at how good this girl was at turning her situation around. It was like she had eyes in the back of her head, which allowed her to avoid being trapped in an ambush. At the same time, being outdone by a devil made the intense hatred he felt toward her kind surge inside of him like a rising tide. Once he caught this bee, he was going to make her pay for making a fool of him. Several more people were taken down before they managed to surround her. Only 10 magicians remained of the original 20. That half of their forces were defeated rankled on him, damaged Owen's pride, but he consoled himself with the knowledge that it was only because they weren't trying to K her. If they had been given permission to simply this little C, they wouldn't have suffered such losses. You've given us a lot of trouble, B, Owen growled at the blonde girl as she stood with her back against a wall. You don't even know how lucky you are. If we weren't ordered not to K you, I would have blown that pretty head of yours off a long time ago. If you were ordered to K me, I would have already escaped and you'd never know about it, Ravel said snidely, her sneer making Owen see red. Tie this precocious little S up. He ordered. Make sure you're rough with her. Just because we can't K her doesn't mean we can't make her suffer. 3 of the 10 remaining magicians landed on the ground and wandered over to Ravel, moving cautiously. Despite finding herself in trouble, however, Ravel did not appear frightened or even worried. She stared at them with an intense look in her eyes as if she was waiting for something. Owen frowned as he tried to divine what she could be waiting for. It wasn't until he remembered something that the blood drained from his face. Where were her friends? Before he could realize that, in his efforts to chase Ravel, he had forgotten about her friends, a loud scream erupted from behind him. He whirled around and saw 2 of his magicians go down when a white cat girl descended from the sky and drop-kicked them. Her attack was so powerful their bee broke the sound barrier before they slammed into the ground with the force of a speeding truck. Seconds after they were defeated, 2 more were done in when spears of light LD through their chests. Owen swore and tried to reinforce his men, but at that moment, Ravel erupted like a ball of flames and soared forward. Wings extended from behind her and flapped. Then they curled around her body, turning her into a human, torch. She slammed into one of his magicians, who screamed and flew backward, his body burnt and blackened. The wings unfurled a second later and she tossed 2 fireballs at another magician. One of them was blocked by a defensive barrier, but the other swerved around the barrier and struck the mage from behind. Owen saw red. Forget about taking her alive. Attack. Attack. Since it looked like they weren't going to succeed anyway, he decided to K her. He was sure their boss would forgive him. However, just as he gave this order, white hair and 2 cat ears appeared within his field of view. He only had 1 second to realize who that was before a foot slammed into his face. Owen felt the inexplicable pain of his jaw shattering. Then everything went black. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.